Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our November live stream. We are excited to be back with everyone, and we've got a great agenda lined up for everyone here in the next hour. Glad to see so many familiar folks coming back month after month. Thank you for supporting us, and thank you for joining us again. It is a happy hour, so cheers. If you have a favorite beverage, we'll make sure we know what everybody's drinking, and feel free to let us know where it is that you are joining us from, which we are really, really excited to see folks from all over the country and even all over the world, which is awesome. So I'm going to introduce our new guest from MoFi here in just a moment, but here's what you can expect in the next hour. We will let you guys know what it is that we're giving away today. We're talking all things turntables, 2-channel, you name it. It's a wide open, fair game. And I will introduce our panel members, and then we will take questions from you all, let you guys know what it is that you want to talk about today. Again, anything related to turntables, related to 2-channel, you name it, we're happy to cover that for you. And then at the end, we will announce our lucky winner, and we will introduce what it is that we're giving away next month as well. So let me introduce our two guests, as well as welcome back Leon and Nick from Audio Advice. So I'll start with John. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today. Why don't you let everybody know a little bit about where you are, what it is you're drinking, of course, and what it is that you do with MoFi.
Sure. Thanks for having me. Good to see you guys. I'm John with MoFi. I run sales and marketing for MoFi Distribution in North America. We started the company about 7 years ago as a sister company to our record label, Mobile Fidelity Sound Lab, just really known as MoFi nowadays. And we import various brands from throughout the world, but I think what we're here to talk about today is MoFi Electronics, which was really one of the main motivations to starting the company, to start building turntables and other source components in a new factory in the US. So we're excited to share that with everybody. Tonight I'm drinking, because it's a special occasion with y'all, the Yamazaki from Suntory, Japan. So just a little bit. It's still a little early here, just a little north of Chicago, so I'm on Central Time. But I don't mind getting a head start with y'all.
That's right. It's 11 o'clock on the East Coast, so we'll welcome you anyways. Quick, fun question. I guess, what is your go-to? I know, prior to COVID, you guys did a great job exhibiting at a lot of venues and events and so forth. What is like your go-to vinyl demo track?
Oh, that's a tough question. Honestly, I don't know if I have a go-to demo track, but the thing that we probably played the most over the last 7 years was the Ultra Disc One Step, our first Ultra Disc One Step Santana Abraxas, and just really all of side A. Just let side A, with the chimes, the little tinkly chimes at the beginning, getting into Black Magic Woman, and that was like the song that would draw people in from the hallways at trade shows, and nobody would leave whenever we played that record.
Yeah, awesome. That's sometimes it's fun just to let the record play from beginning to end like it's meant, right?
For sure.
Let's see. We got folks coming all over the East Coast, New York City, New Jersey. Welcome, everyone. So glad to see so many folks join us from all over the place. Let's see. Well, Ben, welcome. First time, I think, having you on our show. So same question. Why don't you let everybody know where you were joining us from? If you have your favorite beverage, let us know what you're drinking, and of course what you do for MoFi.
Sure thing, Jonathan. Well, I've been with MoFi now about 5 years, and I'm one of the sales guys here. And I have to say, this is one of the most fun jobs I've ever had in the industry, because I get to go around and to meet with a lot of great retailers like Audio Advice. I mean, you guys have such good people. When I visit you, I meet people that really know audio. They care about it. They care about, doing a great job for their customers. And it's really makes what I do a lot of fun. I'm actually calling in today from Northern Virginia, just outside the Washington, D.C. area. And as far as what I'm drinking today, I had my cousin brought me this. I don't know if you can see it. It's called Tarnished Truth. It's a high rye straight bourbon whiskey, and it's made in Virginia Beach. So I'm giving that a little taste. But since we're audiophiles and we're tweaks, I've been experimenting with these. They're called Glencairn glasses, and they're help you capture the aromas in the nose of what you're drinking. So if you're drinking it neat, I find this is really good. The other thing I always have near me is my Washington Nationals water cup. So, that's always nearby as well. But anyway,
I'll raise you there with my Chicago Cubs. That's great. Ben, lots of folks already asking, tell us about those beautiful speakers you got behind you. Are those Wharfdale?
Those are indeed Wharfdale Legion 4s. I'm very, very happy with them. They do great on all kinds of music, and great bass, great smooth mid-range, lots of detail. So
awesome. Same question. I know you're at a lot of shows in the past. What's your go-to turntable demo track?
I've been listening to a lot of vocals. So I've got a Harry Belafonte album that I usually have nearby. I'll probably have that right here. That's just got some great recorded. This was recorded probably around 1960, I'm guessing. So that's usually kept near my turntable. If I want to audition a new component, I'll often use that as a test. I also like a lot of the Eva Cassidy recordings. Musically, they're fantastic. And John, what was that Elvis Presley album? I actually ordered that recently that we found not too long ago. It was like
Stereo 57. Great album.
Yeah, and it's got a recording on there of Peace in the Valley, I think was a song we were using. Yeah. And it's this old kind of gospel song, and just pretty much a cappella, four or five voices. And I just find on a good system, vocals really show you, what the system can do. How natural is it?
Yeah. Awesome. Well, welcome. We are excited to welcome you guys and be talking all things MoFi. Nick, let me welcome you back. Thanks for joining us again. People often ask me the same question. Tell us about those amazing towers you have behind you.
Oh yeah, these are the Rebels F226 BEs behind me. But for those of you who don't know me, my name's Nick. I work primarily in the home theater design side, but got all this start. Really, vinyl sparked my entire interest into the audio industry. So that's really what the gateway drug that got me into all of it. But as for what I'm drinking a little bit of Bolo by Burial, a great brewery out here in Asheville. And as for my demo track, they're constantly changing. I think right now, Will the Circle Be Unbroken by Nitty Gritty is my current go-to. But again, it's always shifting. Yeah,
cool. Well, welcome back. Glad to have you. You were in Asheville, the microbrew capital of the world, some would say, right?
Yep.
And as always, Leon, thanks for joining us again. Welcome back.
Sure. And we were in Asheville last week, so I have a Asheville Highland Brewing. This was one of the first breweries in Asheville. Didn't get my Burial, Nick. Wanted to, but it was a busy time.
Next time.
Yep, next time. And I'm located in Wake Forest, North Carolina. Demo tracks, man.
Wait, real quick, Leon, you don't get too many opportunities to brag about your alumni.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, we're 9-1. That's true. I went to Wake Forest University and live in Wake Forest, where the university was originally. Yeah, but that really varies. I think a really good track to tell if a turntable really has it all together is John Cougar Mellencamp Pink Houses, because that's so rhythmic, and a turntable has to get that right. And some of them kind of sound warbly when that's playing, and if it's spot on, that just has this great rhythm to it. So that's one of my torture tests for a turntable. To see if that makes me want to get up and dance and tap my feet. I know, okay, that turntable's all right.
Cool. Nice. Well, thanks again. I'm Jonathan. I'm drinking a little Bell's Oberon. I'm a former Midwest guy, as I'm a Cubs fan, and so I'm sort of finishing up what I had from this summer. So, cheers to everyone. Thanks again for joining us. Jonathan, why don't you do two things for us? I'm going to put up on the screen so everybody can see what it is that we're giving away, and then also, if you can, for those who maybe aren't as familiar with MoFi, I know you did touch briefly on the introduction there, but maybe tell us a little bit of the history and the brand story behind MoFi.
Sure. Yeah, sounds good. We're giving away a MoFi StudioDeck Foundation Edition turntable. So the StudioDeck Foundation is basically it's named because it's a good foundation. It's a good place to start your system. We're big believers that it's all source first, as Lynn used to say. So having a good turntable is key in any system. This includes our StudioTracker moving magnet cartridge, which comes pre-mounted and aligned. So it's very easy to set up out of the box. You don't need any special tools or knowledge to really get the best performance out of this once you get it home.
Yeah, and then we're throwing in a pair just to make sure that you can get a good start with your turntable. Of course, a pair of the Klipsch 5's powered speakers, which will go really well. But a lot of folks in the chat have already asked, hey, does this come with a cartridge? So obviously you answered that question for us. So tell everybody a little bit more about MoFi.
Yeah, so talking about MoFi, you have to really start with the record label. It started as Mobile Fidelity Records back in the late 1950s by a kid, literally a teenage kid named Brad Miller, who used to go around Burbank and throughout Southern California, and he named it Mobile Fidelity because he was recording train sounds on his portable recorder, and so he was the mobile part of Mobile Fidelity, going to all these train yards and capturing those sounds. And he was really, at the cutting edge of recording technology. Mobile Fidelity was, there at the start of stereo recordings. So this idea of having train recordings that would pan from off in the distance, and you could hear the, chugga, 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 and then the thing comes screeching across your stereo loudspeakers. Like that was the equivalent of 4K HD back then in those days. So it was really well recorded stuff. And then one day he was recording, he started recording a band that was kind of atmospheric, very avant-garde, and a local DJ combined that music with storms and other atmospheric sounds. And that really gave the idea to Brad that, well, maybe we should become more of a music label. And so they recorded some of their own stuff with some smaller bands. But then getting into the 70s, they decided to start remastering albums. And so guys like Supertramp, Pink Floyd is probably the most, Dark Side of the Moon is probably our most famous release of all time. Fleetwood Mac, they were remastering these things and giving the best possible fidelity on vinyl. And that just kind of took off like a shot. It was a huge success for them. And we've been doing it pretty much ever since. And in the last 40 years, we've always wanted to do something more because it all goes back to the source, and the source ultimately is the music. It's the recording. We wanted then to take that level of quality and precision and do the next step, which would be the cartridge and the turntable, what you play the music on. And it's taken us a long time to get there, but then we finally started MoFi Electronics, like I said, about 7 years ago. Leon and I were reminiscing before the live stream here that he was actually there when we launched the brand at CES, 5 or 6 years ago.
I remember it well.
That was the public debut. And, what you don't know going into building a turntable is how hard it is, how difficult it is to execute a really good turntable. You're talking about a mechanical device with very small tolerances. It's easier to build a DAC, quite frankly, or even an amplifier. Building a turntable is one of the hardest things to do well. But it's been a great experience. We opened our own factory in Ann Arbor, Michigan. So these aren't sourced out to anybody in just a simple badge job. I think we did it right. We hired a great team of designers, including Alan Perkins, who's a designer of Spiral Groove. He was one of the early designers at Soda turntables. We hired Mike Latvis from Harmonic Resolution Systems, HRS, who's an expert in isolation technology. And I think putting together this brain trust has ended up with a product that punches hopefully above its weight class.
Yeah,
but that was another important bullet point. We didn't want to build unobtainium products for MoFi. Thinking about Mobile Fidelity record customers, these aren't necessarily audiophiles. They're people who love music. They love rock music. They love jazz. They buy MoFi records because they want the best quality of their favorite album. So we wanted to make these things as attainable as possible. So the foundation we're giving away today is actually our lowest priced entry turntable, but it's by no means entry level, with a price of $10.99. It went up $100, unfortunately, with everything going on, but it's currently $10.99 for that full package.
Yeah, awesome. So it's a absolutely great turntable. One of the favorites from our team. Couple of folks. So lots of questions coming in. We're going to get through as many of these as we can, and of course, we got a nice little giveaway for best question as well, and then we'll open it up. Ben, you want to let everybody know what we're doing for best question giveaway? What did we discuss?
I think it's the super heavyweight.
That's right. I thought you
We
got
are, yes, which is this, is it right here?
Yep, you guys got
It looks sort of like a hockey puck. And what this does is it fits on, not just a MoFi turntable. When you're playing a record, it fits right over the spindle and damps out any resonances on the record while it's playing, which seems like, gee, why is that important? But when you think about it, I mean, look at that picture there. Think how tiny and minute the etchings are in the groove. I mean, we're talking about extremely small movements of the cantilever and the stylus. So any vibration, extraneous vibration that would exist on the surface of the LP can absolutely affect the sound quality. And John, you were talking earlier about Mike Latvis. So this, while it's sort of deceptively simple looking, it's got this metal housing and it looks like a piece of rubber here, which it is, but internally there are these various chambers with very specific viscosity fluids that damp out the resonances. So it's quite effective and it's audible. I mean, you can actually hear what it does.
Yeah, fantastic. So best question, that is a great little side prize. Let's open it up to some audience questions. So first one coming from Larry, what should I be looking for when getting a beginner turntable? I'll just open it up to the panel.
That's a great question. I think a lot of us start with those little Fisher Price plastic turntables. I don't know about you guys. When I was a kid, that was my first turntable, and I think for a lot of folks, it might be something like a Crosley. I know, my nieces and young cousins and things like that get a Crosley, and you know what? They're so happy when they get it, and that's kind of like the main point. But if you have the means, it would be nice to go up beyond that. I mean, getting from that just a few $100s from something like Rega or Project or whoever, it's a world of difference going to that level. But to speak in general, what you want to look for in a turntable, Leon kind of hit on it earlier. Speed, stability is crucial. Playing the John Mellencamp, or I think it's very easy to play a piano recording. If you hear too much wobbliness, warbly tones to the piano and unnatural sustain of the piano, that means it doesn't have great speed precision. So it's not going to be an accurate playback of your record. So that's an easy one, and that's something a lot of direct drive turntables do very well. Where belt drive turntables tend to be stronger, though, is how quiet it is. I think there's a misconception among the general population of what records should sound like. You hear them talk about you love those pops and clicks and that vintage sound. It's like, well, no, actually,
Yeah.
you don't want that pops and clicks.
Right.
You want it to be quiet. And certainly having a clean record is a big part of that. Taking care of your records is a big part of that. But also the turntable itself influences it. Most specifically the motor. You want the motor to be isolated from the platter. So if you look at a MoFi turntable, you can see it's not directly under the platter. It's decoupled by the belt, like other belt-driven turntables are. But we also isolate it with some other tricks that we have to keep the noise of the motor, which is a 300 RPM moving part, from affecting the sound of the turntable. Generally, what the materials are make a huge difference. You don't want a plastic platter. You don't want a magnetic platter. We choose a polymer called Delrin because it's very similar to what vinyl records are made out of, and it's very quiet. It helps keep those pops and clicks and the general surface noise of the record at a very minimal level. And then finally, I think the Tonearm is probably the most misunderstood or least appreciated part for a lot of people getting into this for the first time. And I can tell you from our experience, that is the hardest part to get right, is building a Tonearm. We are talking about tiny, less than hair width tolerances to make a quiet Tonearm, because you're trying to find that balance between low friction or no friction ideally, but there's no such thing as no friction. But you want to get right up to that line of no friction when you're building a Tonearm. So materials, build quality. Ben, I think you talk about this a lot. The turntable is going to be the piece of audio that you interact with the most on a physical level. It's not like a streamer or DAC or an amp where you might just press a button. You can tell a lot about a turntable's quality just by picking it up by how does the button feel, how does the arm feel when you move it over to queue up your next record. That physical interaction will be a really great indicator to how good that turntable is going to sound.
And that's the reason I think that's so important is you're going to do that process every single time you play a record. You're touching the turntable, you're lifting the tone arm if it's not an automatic table. And so, yeah, whether the thing is built with a degree of precision, whether the parts are really finely and excellently machined. I mean, you really sense that. It's almost like getting in a luxury car. It's got a steering wheel just like an entry-level car does, and it's got all the same basic parts, but you can feel the difference. And a really well-made turntable has that same sense to it. And it's part of what makes it a good turntable such fun to use.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're going to buy a bunch of records, you don't want one that's going to carve them up.
No, records have gotten expensive now.
Expensive.
Right.
One thing I would add too is a lot of people want to go out and grab an automatic table because they're like, well, what if the album runs out? But it's I wouldn't say a lot cheaper necessarily, but you can get manual tables for a bit cheaper than automatics, and it's more inert. Doesn't have as many moving pieces, so it's going to play a bit quieter. Kind of to John's point of low surface noise. You want it as quiet as possible.
Well, and the other thing too is, Nick, I mean, it's not going to ruin your turntable or your record if you're sitting there in the run out groove for a minute or two. I mean, it's going to happen. If you listen to your turntable a lot, and it's just. And there also are devices. We have one that we particularly like called the Little Friend, which will automatically lift the arm at the end of a record as well. So those are available.
And some people even use the runout groove to break in cartridges. So it's not going to damage it right away.
It's not. I wouldn't worry about it. And it's where the sound starts. It's your source. And I would suggest just think about it. If you want to get a decent one, get one that might have an upgrade path where you could do some things later on down the road if you wanted to make it even better.
What would be your top 2 or 3 recommendations on upgrades, Leon? First things to focus on.
Well, it's if you can change the cartridge out to a better cartridge, that's probably the first step. Add a weight to it is just nice. Some have better power supplies you can get for them, or upgrade the platter. There's a lot on some types.
Yeah. And if it has a built-in phono preamp, make sure it's defeatable, because that's a really easy and big piece you can upgrade.
For those who are new to vinyl, we're getting a lot of questions on what is a phono stage, and then what would be a good phono stage to pair with this type of a turntable. Maybe you guys can, for those who maybe are new to vinyl, and we are trying to post a lot of great content that we have at audioadvice.com in terms of complete turntable buyer's guide, as well as a lot of other hopefully helpful content, manual versus automatic turntables, etc. But for those who maybe don't know what a phono stage does, maybe you guys can touch on that a little bit, and then what would be a great phono stage to pair with this type of MoFi turntable?
Well, I'll take a quick swing at that. So the signal that comes off of a turntable is different. So when an album is made, in order for the stylus or the needle to be able to track the record appropriately, the bass frequencies in particular are compressed. And when that signal then goes from the turntable into your amplifier, that process has to be reversed, and that's what a phono preamp does, in addition to just amplifying the signal as well. It also gives you your proper loading for whatever cartridge you're happen to be using. And phono preamps can range in price from quite inexpensive to tens of thousands of dollars. They can be, quite sophisticated. The MoFi, we have 2. One is called the Studio Phono, and then we have these other one is called the Ultraphono. And John talked earlier about the design team that we had, and John, you might want to talk about with the phono preamps, because that's a big part of the story with the design as well.
Sure. Yeah, I think one thing you may have missed when your excellent description, you talked about the equalization or re-equalization of the signal because of the bass cut, but just you have to amplify that signal by an order of magnitude, hundreds or thousands of times, because you're dealing with really tiny signals being generated by that little electro motor that's built into a cartridge. You know,
Mhm.
sometimes if you put your ear up to it and it's not coming from your speakers, you can hear the sound being generated through the cartridge. You
Yeah,
can hear,
John, it's like a CD. Sorry, the CD player has 2 volts
yep.
output. A turntable may have 3 millivolts or 0.3 millivolts. It's
Yeah, that's right. Whether it's
it's
a
just
moving
that's a
magnet
huge
or a moving
factor. Yeah,
coil or moving iron, they all have different outputs. So I think a phono preamp has a pretty tough job. It's got one of the hardest jobs. It's trying to amplify the smallest signal without introducing noise. That's one of the biggest challenges. The equalization part's pretty easy because that's standardized by the RIAA Association years ago. There used to be what, a dozen, Leon, dozen different
yep.
EQs that you would use, and your record would say what each label used. But now pretty much everything today is RIAA EQ. Um, Talking about the MoFi phono preamps, again, it ties into the studio. So our studio, we pay a lot of attention to the mastering system, the mastering chain, just like a good audiophile does. We all know that the power cables make a difference, the signal cables make a difference, the power supplies that Leon mentioned, they all make a difference. And the guy who helped design our mastering system at MoFi was Tim DePervicini. Now, Tim was really a brilliant designer. Globally, he was known as like Mr. Tube. Like nobody in the world knew as much about valve electronics than Tim did. He would literally be the guy at an audio engineer convention calling everyone else an idiot. And he would be right. He was brilliant. And one of the major reasons our records sound as good as they do is because of Tim. So when we decided to make electronics, he was naturally the first guy we called to say, hey, we want to give you that studio, get that studio sound, the MoFi studio sound, and put it into a phono preamp. And so he designed the Studio Phono and Ultra Phono preamps for us using a lot of the same kind of methodology that he applied at the MoFi mastering studio in California. And the reviews have been great. I always encourage people get those third-party opinions. There's a lot of reviews and press on both of those that you can read up on as well.
Yeah, great. Anything else to add? We pretty much covered there.
Well, one other thing to add real quick is, back to that question about what to look for in a good turntable.
Yeah.
One thing to really pay attention to is not necessarily the turntable itself, but the setup of that turntable, specifically talking about how well aligned that cartridge is. Because what we're talking about with vinyl playback is dragging a diamond or a rock through plastic, right? So I think somebody said you don't want to chew up your records. Well, that's exactly right. And a misaligned cartridge can do that. And that's why it's so important. I'm going to give Audio Advice a little plug here to have experts who have been doing this for their whole lives, for decades, and they have the tools, they have the knowledge to properly align a cartridge. That is key. I would rather have personally an inexpensive turntable with a properly set up cartridge than the most expensive turntable with a misaligned cartridge. That's how important it is to get these things we're talking about. Zenith angle, azimuth, overhang. You could do a deep dive and watch Michael Fremer's 2-hour long, setup guide, and you could learn these skills. And it's a great skill set to have if you want to do this. But the guys at Audio Advice, they're experts. They know how to do that. And I think that's a huge value added service to what it is you guys offer.
Yeah, we appreciate that very much. Obviously, we put a lot of work into being able to help folks, balance tone arms, mount cartridges, all of those things that you just mentioned. And so we certainly appreciate that. We're happy to help folks out. Again, if you're just getting into vinyl, that's something we can certainly help you with. So appreciate the plug there. We'll keep the questions coming. We'll get through as many of these as we can. Already getting some great feedback on the on this panel and of course the topic that we have. So I guess just really quick for folks again who are maybe new, just the difference between digital and analog. What are some of the benefits that you get through vinyl with an analog signal or sound? I know that's a big debate, but open it up to you guys for your feedback.
The interesting thing to me is that we're sitting here in 2021 and we're talking about turntables. Now, Leon and I have probably been doing this the longest of the people here today. And there was a time when the CD first came out that, we just thought everybody in the industry were, well, turntables will just go away now. And CDs came, and there was this core of users who kind of kept the turntables going. And Leon, I think I'm like you. You said you had a hiatus maybe where you put your records. I did the same thing. I put all my records. I've probably got 1,000 records. They were down in the basement. I just didn't listen to them for quite a long time. And these guys that kept listening to turntables, they said, you know what? I think my turntable sounds better than what you guys are listening to. And, I think they were right. I mean, we offer, as good as streaming has gotten, and it has gotten excellent now. I mean, there is some amazing sound. When we set up a really good system at one of the shows like Expona or places like that, we often find that the best sound we're able to achieve is with the analog, is with the turntable. And so typically I use, I find that the listening experience is very different. I wouldn't want to be without digital, but I wouldn't want to be without my turntable rigs either, because it's really a different way of listening. I mean, when you've got an album cover, I don't even know why I bought this, but this is,
I've got 4 copies of that.
I mean, this is one of those things you could easily stream, but, talking about, the albums you listened to when you were a kid, and this MoFi just came out with this. I was like, I have to get that.
And I have that one too.
Got just a few hundred behind him there.
But with an album, you get pictures of the musicians, you get some blurbs about, what the drummer did before in a past life, or it's a very engaging way to experience your music. And I think that's why it's endured. And it's really, albums and LP listening in general has found a whole new audience. It's not just old guys like me. I mean, there's like John, you were saying, your young nieces and nephews have gotten, they've gotten the bug.
Yeah, digital has gotten really good, especially in the last few years. I'm listening to more digital than I have in a long time. A lot of that has to do with Qobuz and DACs and streamers, how good they've gotten. But there's still something. I was listening to Nirvana's MTV album. It came on a streaming playlist, and really digging it. Right, eyes closed and everything. And then after the first song played, I'm like, I got to go put this on vinyl. And I grabbed the record, put it on. Within 5 seconds, like, oh my God, this is so much better. So we could have arguments all day long about bit perfect and resolution and high res and surface noise and dynamic range. At the end of the day, the math part is important, but it's what do you feel when you play it? And I'm with Ben. I just feel like when I'm more engaged with the music when I play the record. And its staying power is a testament to that. Its popularity. We're living in the golden age of vinyl right now. I really believe that. I mean, we're not just MoFi, but we were talking earlier off camera about Blue Note Tone Poet reissues are phenomenal. If you're a jazz lover, like those are just unbelievable and a great value. What Analog Productions, our competitor, does, they're making awesome records too, and we can't reissue every single title. So it's great that there's these other audiophile labels out there who are paying attention. I saw a question in the chat. Does the material the record's made out of make a difference? Oh yeah. Does the presses you use make a difference? The plating of the lacquer everything makes a difference when you're talking about a physical object like an LP. So no, not all records are created equally. But right now, there's an abundance of high quality pressings available to you, more than ever before, even with the shortages. And I know it's a hard time being a record collector right now because the demand is exceeding the supply, but you at least have options to get these things and get good pressings. So the labels are important to look at. Somebody asked, how do you tell what's a good record? a good release, because there's certainly bad releases out there. Don't get me wrong. There's some that are just pure cash grabs, because it's a famous artist. Let's get the lowest quality most quantity out there, and that's just part of the game, I guess. But looking at who the mastering engineer is, if you can kind of familiarize yourself with that, like if you see a Robert Ludwig name as a mastering engineer, that's probably going to sound pretty good. So there's other guys like that that will almost be a guarantee of a high level of quality when buying a new record.
Yeah, Discogs is a great source too to log on there and check out. You can enter a record name and see all the different pressings and see people's reviews on the different pressings. That has saved me some money on some 180 gram releases that turned out might not have been so good. But vinyl is also just so social. Before COVID, I'll never forget. We had like 10 people over for a dinner party, and we're all old, and about 9 o'clock we're all about to go to sleep. and so I walk across, put on a record, and before I know it, everybody's looking through my records trying to find stuff. And we played records till past midnight. It is a very neat. Once COVID gets a little tamped down, another great social factor too.
I definitely echo that. My wife and I love putting a record on, once the kids are in bed and just kind of hanging out and letting it just play through, right? It's a lot of fun for sure.
Yeah, it does force you to listen to the whole album versus with Qobuz. You just you're flicking through songs. You're thinking more about what's the next song going to be than just sitting there enjoying the music.
Yeah, I think it's easier to get started, in digital. It's cheaper, because you can just buy a decent DAC or set up powered speakers, and it's pretty straightforward. But it takes a little bit more upfront cost to get a good vinyl playback system. But if you really think about it, a lot of high quality albums are recorded on a tape, which is an analog source, and then it's going straight to analog or direct to disc on some albums. But it's never going through the processing of digital necessarily. So it's kind of more straight from the source is my original idea behind it. But there are a decent amount of records out there that have been digitally touched that are still in decent sounding albums.
Yeah, it's hard to tell where some of these pressings fall down. There's so many failure points that are possible with an LP. Sometimes, I don't know if you guys saw this, it's going around Facebook right now. Apparently Taylor Swift just issued an album at 45 RPM, and people are saying, why is there a man singing on this Taylor Swift album? But, somebody on that team decided or knew, wow, 45 RPM recordings, and we're not talking singles for the folks at home, we're talking full-size records, but there's more groove area left for the music, so you get better sound, but you got to select that 45 RPM speed on your turntable. But that's another way to find, hey, this is probably a better than average recording if it's done at 45 RPM.
John, I'm glad you brought that up. I have a 13-year-old daughter who's been playing the Taylor's Red version for nonstop for the last probably 4 or 5 days. I've got it in my head now.
Nice.
Let's see. Lots of questions on moving magnet versus moving coil. Maybe you guys can touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, so moving magnet, just the general bullet points are it's going to typically have more output than a moving coil. So the requirements of your phono preamp are going to be less sophisticated. You don't need as much signal gain like we talked about. So you're going to get more signal right out of the cartridge. They typically are easier to manufacture, so they're generally a lower priced option as well. But that doesn't mean they don't sound good. I mean, there's a lot of great moving magnet cartridges out there. And in fact, when we started the company, we made the decision because we want our products to be easy and accessible and affordable, we're going to focus on moving magnet cartridges to start. So our StudioTracker, UltraTracker, and MasterTracker, our 3 cartridge models are all moving magnet. And so they're pretty universal. Virtually any phono preamp will work with those. Moving coils, instead of having magnets that are on the other end of what you call the needle or cantilever, you have coils, and the coils tend to be a lot lighter, which makes them more responsive to the changes in the groove walls. So you tend to get more detail, especially if you have music with complex passages like big orchestral music with a lot of violins and more high frequency information. Moving coils can give a more vivid, detailed experience, again, speaking in general terms, than a moving magnet cartridge can. The downside to this is they're harder to make. and they have typically less output voltage than a moving magnet. So you need to have more gain available on your phono preamp, requiring a better phono preamp. Again, these are all general terms. Our moving magnet cartridges, from the $200 StudioTracker to the $800 Master Tracker, they sound pretty darn good. And we actually paid a lot of attention to the mass of the magnets, and that's one of the things that gets upgraded as you go up the line. Once you get to the Master Tracker, it has the lowest mass magnets that you can possibly get for a moving magnet cartridge. So it's almost moving coil-like in terms of its responsiveness. But we just announced our new moving coil, our first ever, the Ultra Gold MC, which starts shipping this month. And this was developed by Alan Perkins, who was our turntable designer. Alan's now a full-time MoFi engineer, and he did all the final voicing on this. It has a Shibata stylus, which gives you a ton of pretty much all the detail. It's very similar to what a record lathe uses. This is a 0.4 millivolt output, so it's going to be pretty universal, but you'll need a good phono preamp to use this. And this will be $14.95 shipping this month.
I'd say though, if you're just starting out, I think a moving magnet is the best way to go if you're just getting into your first turntable, because most built-in phono preamps on some receivers and amplifiers are going to be moving magnet. But you hear so many more details with a moving coil.
Yeah. Yep.
If you have a good phono stage and a good Tonearm that lets it track like it should.
Yeah, but nothing wrong with a moving magnet. I mean,
no, there's some great ones out there.
There are great ones. Yeah, they have an energy to them that a lot of moving coils, unless you just get it really dialed in right, don't have. So there's always pros and cons and trade-offs to everything. But typically, I'm sure like Leon, I mean, I use moving coils typically in most systems now. Once you graduate to the next level, it's typically going to be to a moving coil cartridge.
And a cartridge really holds all the tonality. You know, that's well, not all of it, but a good amount of the tonality comes from it, because the turntable's job is to be, you know, noise isolating, is to spin in a circle consistently. You know, it's a much more complicated method to do that, but a lot of your tone is sitting in that cartridge, and so just swapping a cartridge alone can change your table a ton. So, you know, like both you guys said, the moving magnet, easier to get started on, but a moving coil, once you get into those, it's a total game changer.
Yeah, the reason for that, Nick, is so true. Is the cartridge is actually changing one form of energy into another. It's changing that mechanical energy in the LP into an electrical signal that gets fed to your hi-fi. In fact, it's really kind of the inverse of what your speakers do. You know, where your speakers are turning that electrical signal back into a mechanical signal. And we all know that speakers can sound very different from each other, and, you know, changing your speakers can make a big difference in your system. And so you're exactly right that, you know, changing your phono cartridge can also make a surprising difference in the sound of the overall system.
Let's see, thank you for that. That's great. A couple folks asking questions on this is getting a little in the weeds, but you know, tone arms, length of tone arms, you know, how that plays a role, and so forth. So maybe you guys can touch on that a little bit as well.
Yeah, so the way a record is cut, it's not with a pivoted arm. So that's what we have on almost every turntable uses what's called a pivoted arm. You know, you grab it and it just moves on one pivot point. They use what are called linear tracking arms when they cut a record. So a pivoted arm is never going to be perfectly aligned with the groove walls, almost no matter what. You'd have to have like an infinite length pivoted arm to do that. But the reason we don't use linear tracking arms typically, although there's a few out there that do, they're very hard to manufacture, very hard to maintain, and they also have what they call a crawling jitter effect on most consumer grade turntables. So they're not always going to give you all the performance you think you're going to get. Pivoted arms are the best compromise, in my opinion, and many, you know, engineers would say the same thing, that it's going to give you the best bang for your buck and then some on a consumer turntable. Where the length of the arm plays in is to reduce that tracking error, to get it more aligned with the record groove walls. So most arms are going to be 9 inches in length. That's kind of your typical arm length. 12 is a very popular length, but when you start increasing the length of the arm, you're also increasing the mass of the arm, which is not always a good thing depending on the cartridge you want to use. You also have the possibility of losing some of the rigidity of the arm because you're talking about a pretty small tube, usually of aluminum or stainless steel, sometimes carbon fiber. And the longer you make that tube, the less rigid it's going to be. So again, it's all about trade-offs and balances. And Alan Perkins, our turntable designer, years ago determined 10 inches. That's the best balance. That's one man's opinion. You'll find 1,000 opinions on this, but we felt like, okay, 10 inches is a good compromise because it gives you lower tracking error. We're not getting so long that you're losing rigidity compared to a 9-inch arm. It also allows us to keep the turntable relatively compact. You guys probably noticed our turntables are larger than average already, and that's to accommodate that 10-inch arm. You have to have a bigger body to support that arm length. Once you get into 12 or 14-inch arms, your turntable gets even larger. So we felt like that was the best balance to give you the cleanest sound without getting too crazy with the size or the price of the table.
Yeah, great info. Anything to add? The rest of the crew?
Yeah, I would say don't make that your determining factor on the turntable you're going to get, because they're all designed kind of as a whole, and I would look at just the bearings in the tone arm. I think are probably more important these days than the length of the tone arm. It needs really good bearings, needs to be anti-resonant and all that. So look at those things as well.
Absolutely agree with that. Yeah.
Our good friend Brian asked, Ben, this is a question for you. What are the two turntables you have sitting behind you?
So I have the MoFi StudioDeck that is right here, and that's where I just initially I had the StudioTracker on there. The Ultra Deck is the more expensive of the two MoFi turntables. It's probably gotten more reviews, more accolades, and I don't know. My own theory on that is, I think, John, you probably know better than I do, but a lot of the reviewers, they're like, whatever it is they're reviewing, they're like, let me have the top of the line, and so the Ultra Deck is, while it's gotten more reviews, I think it's fair to say, I'm a big fan of the StudioDeck. It's got a lot of similarities to the Ultra Deck, and compared to other things that are under $2,000-$3,000, it's got some very high-end features, whether it's the Delrin platter. We don't have time probably to get into what an inverted bearing is, but the StudioDeck is really made with an engineering sort of gravitas, I guess you would say, that I find very impressive for somewhat of a modest price turntable. The turntable sitting next to it is a turntable from Germany, made by Dr. Feichert Analog. That's another brand that we work with. There actually is a Dr. Feichert who makes these turntables in the Black Forest of Germany, and they're quite excellent. Quite a bit, a different price range. That turntable sitting behind me, I didn't added it up, but it would be, pretty darn expensive. With the arms on it, probably between $10,000 and $15,000 without cartridges.
Cool. You guys just recently worked on a really cool turntable project that you probably would love to share. I know I've got my eyes on one, so maybe you guys can tell us a little bit about your the new partnership you guys just came out with. Probably put that up on the screen too.
Yeah. This is one of the coolest things that our company has ever been involved in. So by chance, a high up executive at Fender was in an audio retailer of ours one day and said, man, what do you think? Could we make a Fender turntable? Do you know who could make that? And he sent them our way. So it was literally by chance that this happened, chance encounter that this happened. And of course, there was a lot more after that to make it all come together. But man, I'm just going to let the picture speak for itself for a second here.
But there's also actually a reason, as to why they were interested in this, right?
Yeah, so Fender, you see it's a Fender branded turntable made by my MoFi, our factory in Ann Arbor. And this was to celebrate Fender's 75-year anniversary. And we just made it in time to actually start producing these things. But there was an interesting backstory that Leo Fender, before starting Fender Electric, actually had designed and patented a turntable back in 1945. He ended up selling that patent, and about a year later started Fender Electric, I think a little bit with the help of that patent sale seed money. So there is an authentic history of turntable design and the Fender brand behind this. We also didn't want to do, again, like a rebadge of just a existing MoFi model. We felt like, okay, this has to be special. This can't just be an Ultra deck with a paint job. And the Fender Custom Shop, the famous iconic custom shop out in California that makes all the custom guitars and basses for all your favorite musicians, was great enough to design the body of the turntable for us. And we landed on using the body of a P bass, the Swamp Ash body, the little blank that goes onto a P bass to make this turntable. And we just found that the size and the resonant qualities of that P bass were ideal as a platform to build on. Now we took that, because we don't want our turntables to resonate like a bass, and send it to Mike Latvis from Harmonic Resolution Systems. And Mike did all kinds of crazy scientific analysis to it and was able to help tune the body to eliminate any unwanted resonances from it. So you get the beauty of that, tricolor sunburst finish. You get the real wood swamp ash body, but it's not going to detract from the quality or fidelity of the turntable. Now, the rest of the components we chose were our ultra level tone arm, which is wired with Cardis wiring on the inside, uses our best ABEC 5 level bearings in it. We're using the same large Delrin platter and inverted bearing system. The motor is from Hurst in Indiana, so it's a 300 RPM Hurst American-made motor. But man, the thing just sings, and it's a step up over even the Ultra deck, which is pretty highly rated at this point. And it's just a beaut. It's a beautiful turntable to look at. This comes with our master tracker moving magnet pre-mounted and aligned already, so you'll be ready to go. You'll just need a phono input on your preamp, or need an external phono preamp to use. Now, these are small batch builds because the bodies are being made by Fender in California. They're then shipped to us for fine finishing, for finishing out the space for the power button. Like, we're doing a lot of final steps in Ann Arbor to the body. They take us a lot of time to build. This is our most complicated product that we make. So we're only knocking out about 20 of these per week at this time. And we're only making 1,000. And that's for the whole world. We had a call before launching this thing publicly with you guys, and we're able to secure a limited number for audio advice. And what I was told before the call here is that you've already sold half of your allocation. I know a lot of retailers have sold at, maybe that much, or sold through their allocation. So if people want one of these things, you're going to have to wait. It's going to take us a while to build them all, but get your pre-order in if this is really something that you want.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, we've already pre-sold, I think, half of it we've already ordered. So we'll have to see if you guys can maybe get a little bit more allocation for us, but it is beautiful. That Fender Starburst is just.
Oh, I had to set mine to the side. I've got my telly back here and the Sunburst for the exact same reason. I was like, we're going to be talking about it. I'm sure I'm going to set it back here.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
And this has kind of reminded us on our end of, I know you guys are, and a lot of people on are probably familiar with the MoFi one steps, which are our absolute finest reproduction of a given album. In this case, yes, Fragile. And they come in a limited run, and once they're gone, they're kind of gone. And we had these turntables. We announced it, and we expected it to last us for 2 years. And I think in about 2.5, 3 days, they were all spoken for by the dealer. So, there still are some available through, if you call Audio Advice or another dealer, you may be able to get them, but they're all spoken for a 2-year supply. And it was amazing when people saw it. They just said, wow, that's really cool looking.
That home run for sure. Someone asked, you guys going to do a Steinway for their 175th? Leave it open, right? Leave it open. Well, that's about all the time we have for this evening. Again, we appreciate everyone dialing in from all over the country, all over the world. Lots of great questions. We could easily go on for a whole nother hour, very, very easily. So the winner for our best question, let me pull that back up here real quick, was here we go. Michael Henry, who asked us about, are all records created equal, right? So great question. Lots of good feedback on that. Forgive me for my puppy just walking in here right at the end. And real quick, before we announce the winner of our big giveaway, again, our awesome turntable and Klipsch 5 speakers, I want to let everybody know what it is that we're going to be giving away next month. Let me pull that up real fast. So we will be giving away, if you guys don't know about Hiko, they are a German brand, new to the US, but been around in Germany for a long time. One of the most well-known German brands, speaker brands in that country that we are excited to be partnering with coming here to the US. So we're going to be giving away a full 5.1 home theater system. So almost $2,700 value. You can check it out there. The link is live. You can go ahead and enter now. We are super excited about giving that away here for our next giveaway. But again, John, thanks for joining us. Ben, thanks for joining us. Great discussion. Lots of great feedback from everyone about the conversation. Lots of very educational, very informative. So we appreciate your time joining us tonight. Nick, Leon, as always, thank you for joining us. So I'll get a little virtual drum roll for our winner here from a real drum roll. Thank you, Jerry McNeil from Louisiana. Jerry, you are our lucky winner. So congratulations, MoFi turntable as well as the Klipsch powered speakers. We'll put that up for you real quick so you can see, again, the giveaway for today. So congratulations. We are super excited for you. Again, thanks everyone for joining us. Panel, thank you so much. It was a great conversation. Hope everybody had a great time, and we will see you guys all again next time.